nobody knows what happens after death. I mean, nobody has lived to tell the story. So you can't say for sure what happens after death. But then there are some people who have come to form the beliefs that there is in fact an afterlife, and depending on how you navigate your life here on earth, your afterlife situation could either be tragic or pleasurable. Now, they don't know for sure. You can't prove that. You can't prove that heaven or hell exists because you've never been there before. Everybody's going to want to do what it would take to guarantee them a more pleasurable afterlife situation. I believe that if you live life with that kind of mentality, you're already dead, because then you don't get to pause and smell the flowers. You don't get to actually be present and actually live life because you're scared of what's going to happen if you make the slightest mistake. I see death as something to be celebrated. And I mean, in ancient civilizations, they actually celebrated death.
Man wasn't created to die. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a problem with death, is because not only is it that we don't understand it, but man originally, according to God's original plan, wasn't made to die. Death only came into the picture after the fact, right? And when death came to the picture, man was made slave to death. Death ruled over us. And so with death came everything else: darkness, sickness, poverty, death and its children, every other thing that looks like that separation from life. And Jesus Christ came into the picture, according to the Bible, to answer that question. And that's, yes, in fact, the holy grail of Christianity, because his death was the answer to the fall of man. It was essential that he had to die. You know, he came to redeem. To redeem means to buy back. To restore means everything that man lost in the Garden of Eden. The death of Christ came to fix, to return us back to that original state. According to original design, if you're one with God, then you master death. Death is not over you like it was in the fall of Adam. When you're redeemed, death is under you. So you have a say, you know, especially when there is no sin.
Wonderful people at home. Welcome to another episode of Versus. So to my left, I have a fantastic actor, Etim Effiong. To my right hand side, I have the lovely Shalom. So in a moment, I'll ask you to share your orientation to people at home. But can we start from Daniel? So tell us about yourself, your worldview, how it's developed into what it is now, before we now go into the conversation of today.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Etim Effiong. I'm an actor, a filmmaker, storyteller, a professing Christian, a man of faith, like I like to say. I was born into a Catholic family. Both of my parents were Catholics. Well, along the line, I found Christ. I got evangelized. You know, I got preached to, and I gave my life to Christ. And then in secondary school, I got involved with the Christian fellowship in secondary school, where I became an executive in the fellowship and rose through the ranks and became president of the Christian fellowship in secondary school. I went on to university and joined the fellowship there in university as well. But all through, I was heavily involved in acting and storytelling and drama. So every church or every fellowship I was a member of, I got into the fellowship drama team or drama group. So my walk of faith has been quite linked or heavily linked with this path of storytelling, this path of entertainment. So it's interesting because in my life, I can't really separate storytelling or entertainment from my love for God or my walk with God. However, something interesting happened to me in university that radically just changed my worldview. I was a Christian student. I was very into God, very into my books. I was like a SU, or what you call
the
them.
triangle,
Yeah,
church,
exactly.
hostel.
Church, hostel, school. That was me in university.
I know that
But then
triangle.
something happened to me. The school came up with this list of court members that they were going to expel from the university, and miraculously my name made its way to that list. Very interesting, and I got kicked out of Federal
What?
University of Technology, Minna, for being a cult member. And of course
The irony of
that changed my life. I was like, oh God, why me? I thought, it was an attack. And I'm like, we're going to pray about it and change this thing. And then, gathered all my fellowship members together. Hey, let's do this. And then we prayed and prayed and prayed and did all we could do, and nothing changed. 2 years I was away from school. But what's funny is that in those 2 years, I got kicked out of school. I got into a reality show, Amstel Malta Box Office, Season 2, Amble. For the first time in my life, I got exposed to the world of entertainment. Remember, before then, I just had the passion for entertainment, and I just loved it. And interestingly, one day, because I was an SU guy, I was praying on the field in school. Skabashi. And I was like, oh God, I really love acting. I really love entertainment. Why am I in engineering? Like, I feel stuck in this world of chemical engineering, far away in Mina, far away from everything else. Why? Like, in my heart, I want to act, I want to be in entertainment. Why am I here? And God told me something. I heard a voice behind my ear saying, you're going to make films. I was like in my early 20s. I'm like, but how? Like, this is so far removed from my reality. Like, I didn't know anything about, all I knew was acting in church. I'm like, how will I make films? This is so far removed from my reality. And, I just let that slide and all of that. But, and then that in my third year in university, still SU, still going to acting in fellowship, still going to classes. I was a 4-pointer in chemical engineering.
Wow.
You know how hard that is, because I was just into the books, right? And then that list came out, and lo and behold, my name was there, number 100 and something, 150 names to be expected. I was the only fellowship member there, only SU person on that list, amongst all the happening boys on campus, and amongst all the, I was the only Jew man really there. And I got kicked out of school. But in those 2 years I was away from school, I got expelled. Immediately I got expelled, I got an opportunity to get into Amstel Malta Box Office, where we were trained in acting, in dancing, in singing, the same one that OC UKJ won. I was on that show. Who were our coaches? Our coach was Sam Dede, Akin Lewis, Bimbo, Akintola, Charles Novia. These guys trained us within the period that we were on the reality show. I came out of that reality show, and my life was just exposed to fame. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, it happened like a flash, right? And then immediately after that, of course, I couldn't go back to school. My parents were like, oh, go back and start again. I was like, no, I wanted to go to film school. So that was my first journey into film school. I went to film school in Jos, NFI. I was there for about a year. Then Mina called me back and said, oh, we have forgiven you. Come back and complete your chemical engineering. So that's how I went back and completed.
You went back?
I went back.
I
went back. All my mates had graduated, everything. I was back in school, finished my chemical engineering. But then something happened to me. It broke religion in my heart. So when I was saying earlier before we started rolling, that I'm a free thinker, it's because I'm not, yes, I'm Christian. I'm a professing Christian, but I'm more of a man of faith. My walk has been a walk of faith, really, because for me, my experiences in life hasn't been do what they tell you to do. Because your parents are Christians, therefore you're a Christian, or because, it has been a radical journey with God personally. And that's just the one experience I've had. I've had several other landmark experiences in my life that tells me that beyond what we can see, feel, hear, there is something else. So I cannot, for the life of me, live my life as though this is all there is.
I love that. Thank you very much. That was a very, very deep introduction. It's going to give us a very great segue into our conversations. Shalom, let's talk about you now.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I was born into a family of pastors. My father is a pastor with the Redeemed Christian Church of God. And I feel like that was my first difficulty coming into life because
I hear that
how?
being a pastor's child must have come with its pressures and
Yes, it's very tough. It's like you didn't have a life of your own. You had to perform for the people who were watching you. That was one of my main problems with my parents then, because they didn't let me live my life. They were always breathing down my neck because what would people say and all of that. But right from childhood, I've been, should I say, I've had like a rebellious spirit. Like, I'm not one to be caged down, especially when it comes to like my mind. I had always been very advanced in my thinking, even as a child, like even as a young person. I would always seek out knowledge, seek out information. I was always reading like books beyond, school books and all that. So I feel like I actually got awakened pretty early because I just started to note the inconsistencies in the belief system, especially how coming to people who teach you about God, they don't really represent what you should think of as godlike or what you should expect from people who claim to serve God. So that was my first inconsistency, because being a pastor's child, I was really, really close to the system. I could see, what was happening behind the scenes, a lot of things, like even the injustice that my dad faced as a pastor then, because he really gave his life into the system. That was part of like what made me so angry about religion, because my dad gave his life away to the church, barely spent time building a relationship with us because he was serving God. And I wouldn't blame him, because he had a great amount of conviction in what he was doing. But the problem was that his family suffered. So I, having been born into that setting and, knowing everything that I had to know about it from an early age, it just wasn't satisfactory to me. So, and then again, I used to read a lot. So like I was already exposed to like different ways of thinking. And then in university, I actually promised myself that once I got out of my father's house, I wasn't going to go to church again, because I hated, like, Sundays were my worst days, because you have to wake up early, be in church first, and then when you go to church like that early, you wouldn't be coming back until late afternoon. It's like spending the whole day. Because you can't even, like, I was a child, I couldn't leave on my own. My dad had all these meetings and stuff. Yeah. And then again, it's like, the image that was portrayed to the people just wasn't the same. I mean, I would hear people speak about my dad, like, your dad is such an amazing person, but like, I knew the reality of the person that I used to live with. And not just my dad, it's just something that I have noticed, or I had noticed because I was very close to a lot of ministers and pastors, my relatives, my uncles, aunties. I was like, even if there was a God, I don't want to listen to your God, because like, your God terrifies me. Yeah, so I went to the uni, and I think what started my deconversion was Dan Brown books.
Dan Brown?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I read the Da Vinci Code, I read Origin.
I avoided that Da Vinci Code.
Very good. Very good books.
I avoided it.
Yeah, so it opened, and thank God for the internet, because there's a lot of information that's available to you online. So when I come in contact with something that, should I say, challenges my beliefs or challenges my ideology, I don't want to be the foolish one arguing against what I don't know about. So I would go into, research. Like, for example, I come across information that's like completely different from what I was taught. Instead of, what the average Christian would do, they would just shut you down and start attacking your personality, rather than even like facing what is at hand. I instead would go back, actually do the work to research on these things. And then I found out like they weren't just talking out of their noses. Like, there was truth in what they were saying. And so I started to go like deep down into the rabbit hole. found out that most of the things that were taught were just not real. Like,
Interesting. Sorry to cut you a little bit there so that we don't veer off topic. So I'm just going to introduce our topic now, because our topic for today's show is life, death, and reincarnation. So I'm glad that we already spoke about our lives, because we're going to start from living life now, and how your religious view has helps you to navigate through life. So you can just pick up from that while connecting that to the conversation. We're still talking about life. In a moment, we'll get into death, but just let's talk about that life. So you mentioned how growing up, there was a different view of people that people had of your folks, and you had a different view. Then you had to find the way for yourself. You also mentioned that you had a lot of personal experiences which necessitated you finding out your way. So, is it your opinion that when living life, whatever worldview one has or was given to one, is it your opinion that one must challenge those views and find their own views that resonate with their lives more? Do you understand the question?
yes, I do. And I actually agree with that because there's something called indoctrination, right? So when you're born, you're literally socialized by your immediate environment, your parents. Then when you interact with the outside world, say in school, you're also socialized by your teachers. You go to church, you're socialized by your pastors. So there is just a lot of other people's opinions that are being fed into your subconscious, especially as a child. From ages like until you're about 7, 8, you're still in that, it's called the theta brainwave state, where you're basically just operating from your subconscious. You can't form any thought on your own. Your critical thinking faculties have not developed yet. And so your worldview is highly reliant on the people who are around you. And these people most times are, as a child, you're vulnerable, right? So you have to depend on these people who are more mature than you to take care of you and all. So you wouldn't want to do anything that jeopardizes your safety, which means you have no choice but to follow the path that is set for you. Now, most people grow up with that path and they don't get to question it. But if you ask them, they will say, yes, this is what I believe in and I chose it for myself. Not knowing that the seeds for your thoughts or your perceived choice had been planted since when you were a child. So it takes a great deal of work to be able to reprogram your subconscious when things have been deeply embedded in them. So I don't believe that most of the people actually have their own opinions about, life and all these things because they were indoctrinated into those beliefs.
That's lovely. Daniel.
Yeah, just to speak to that, I also agree with that. I mean, just looking at the natural world, you'd understand that um, every culture has a system where what is known or the lived out practices is passed on from generation to generation. It's how the world works. No one gives birth to it. Even look at the animal kingdom. Like you don't just give birth, except maybe a few of them, reptiles. You give birth and you just leave the child to figure its way out. No, they're laid out practices, they're principles you have to pass on, to the child to make meaning of its immediate environment. However, you get to a point in life where, and for many cultures, it's your entrance into adulthood. So you live, like you said, there's a certain way you live, but as you grow, you have to break out of that to find out life for yourself. It's even biblical. It's in the Bible where the Bible says, as long as a child remains, as long as an heir. So you can be an heir and have everything, like the kingdom might be yours. But as long as you're a child, you are put under watch. You're put under slaves. You're put under servants to hold you and guide you until you become an adult. When you become an adult, then you're no more under tutelage. You have to find out life for yourself. like you've come to understand life for yourself. You have to. However, you can understand life falsely or you can understand life rightly. It's all to you. And well, maybe not right or wrong, forgive me, but you can just understand life in different ways. It's up to you. But yes, there's a time where you break out from the shackles that have held you. Those are safety guards, but as you grow, you break out from those safety guards and start walking on your own and start figuring life out for yourself. Yeah.
Do you think that the quality of life that a human being lives is dependent on the beliefs that they have, the beliefs of their religious systems? Do you think it influences positively or negatively the quality of life of a human being?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. A man is only what he a man is you're only as good as your purview. You're only as good as the way you see your life. Is the lens you look through life. If you're wearing red lenses and you put on the red lenses, you're going to see life as red. If you have clear lenses, you see life as clear. So if your lenses are contaminated, the Bible says if a man's eye is stained or is dirty, he will see life as dirty. You're only as good as the light that you have. You only experience life according to the light that you have. So if your light is small, you have a small life. If your life is big, you will have a big life.
Thank you very much. All right, now let's go to death. Because, of course, when you talk about life, you talk about death. I didn't used to think about death a lot in the past. This thing where until it really happens to someone close to you, it always feels like death is really, really far away. So growing up, we had a very tightly knit family, 5 of us kids, mom and dad, not very close to our extended family. So whatever happened in the extended family didn't really apply to us. But it just felt like death was such a far away thing. Sometime in 2020, late 2020, I lost my brother to a car accident, died on the spot. And it was one of the things that actually shaked my belief system. Really, really rocked my belief system. Not immediately, but much after, for various reasons. I never thought that death could happen to someone that's close to me, because death always felt like such a terrible thing. So when it happened to my brother, it was a very tough moment for me. Which brings me to my question. Should we be afraid of death as humans? Do you think death is something that we should be afraid of? That's my first question in this series.
No, definitely not.
Okay, why may I ask?
Because death is as natural as life. And if you're able to accept life, then you should be able to accept death. It's just part of the cycles of life. And for the obvious fact that it's inevitable, I don't think anybody wants to waste their life being scared of something that they can't escape. Yeah.
Interesting. What's your opinion on that?
I totally agree that. But the issue is that humans would generally be afraid of what they do not understand. But the moment you understand it, then you can now either embrace it or do whatever you want to do with it. If you don't want to embrace it, you can reject it or whatever. But I think understanding it is a key element in the discourse. I see death as separation. Death is separation, and the death as we experience it here on earth is just one of the forms of it. But there are different forms of death. As a believer, we understand the ultimate death is separation from God, right? And that's what Adam experienced. When God said, God told Adam, the first man made in the image of God, that if you eat this fruit, on the day you will eat this fruit, you will die. But guess what? The day they ate the fruit, they didn't die. They still lived. Adam still lived several hundred years after he ate the fruit. But he did die on that day. But it took time for the death to manifest in the physical. So this physical death that we're talking about, that we are all afraid of, is just even like the easiest. The separation from God, which is the key, which is why there is fear attached to this death, because
in the spirit, first of all, if you separate from God, it's such a big thing because we were made, you were saying something before the cameras are rolling about your God, where God, that concept comes from the fact that come from a oneness with God. Now, that fact is only true when you are one with God. If you are one with God, then you are God because you are one with Him. If you're His son, then you cannot be a goat, or you cannot be, because your son is a man like you, right? So that oneness with God is a concept that was first established in the Bible, right? Before people started to use it for different reasons. Anyways, yeah, so that separation which Adam experienced was the first and original death, And then that separation from God then now starts to manifest in different things. Then your business will crash, then then your health, then there are little deaths. When there are parasites in your body killing things, those are little kinds of deaths that ultimately would result in the final death, which is a separation from life. So yeah.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. And
So meanwhile, if you're not separate from God, there's no way the death that we experience can happen to you. It is impossible. It took God to be separated from Christ for him to die. Do you know they tried to kill him several times biblically, according to the Bible? They tried to kill Jesus Christ several times. There are historical facts of apostles in the book of Acts, in the Bible, where they tried to kill several times, but they just couldn't die. Jesus just couldn't die. But it took God detaching himself from him to say, I give up the ghost. And it's even proven that there are men, ordinary men like you and I, who have defied death several times. There's a guy that they shot 16 times in his head, he didn't die. So death is very fluid in our understanding. It's not just as straight as we see it, really.
interesting. I was going to ask, the follow-up question to that should be, what do you think happens after death? But I feel like before we go there, I want us to talk more about the fear surrounding death, how society has made that subject to be one that people hardly speak about. People are scared to speak about death. People always regard death as something that would not happen to us as individuals. Yes, because the facts of life is, no matter how young you are, no matter how healthy you are, you could literally be going back to your house today. Something unforeseen happens, and then you die. So it could be closer than you think, and it could also be really, really far. So in that sense, how then do you prepare for death? Do you prepare for death? How do you live your life in anticipation of death? Are you supposed to pray against death? Are you supposed to wish it on others? Like if there's an accident now and one person survives and 5 others die, then one person goes to do testimony in church and says that God saved him. So is it the devil that killed the other 5 people? So yes, these questions around death and why there is so much fear. Why do you think that society has made the topic one that people hardly speak about, one that people hardly prepare for, and one that has so much negative light? So much negative light. Like my brother died at 29, and the whole conversation around his death was more, what he could have achieved, or his parents were expecting him to get married, or he could have had a son. Very little was said about the life he lived, even though it seemed short. Very little was said about the life he lived and the impact that it had in that short time. And even if someone dies at 70, look at Albert Wigwe's death. He achieved so much But there was a lot that was made up around, the circumstances of his death. It was so tragic. It was very little about the life that he lived. So why is the fear of death paid much more attention than the quality of life? I'm also going to connect it to the life and death of Jesus Christ. In Christendom, the death of Jesus Christ is the Holy Grail. He died for you. He died for your sins. You have to believe in him, and then you go into heaven. What about his life? What about his teachings? What about the miracles that he did? What about the parables? Which is more important? So I don't know. I rambled a bit. I said a lot. But can you speak about that?
And okay, so I feel like a lot of the fear that surrounds death also comes from religion, religious beliefs, because first of all, nobody knows what happens after death. I mean, nobody has lived to tell the story, so you can't say for sure what happens after death. But because, like you said, humans do not like the idea of the unknown, the gaps in our minds, in our memory, like we fear it a lot. We're scared of the unknown. And death is a literal definition of the unknown. You don't know what happens when you cross into the other side. But then there are some people who have come to form the beliefs that there is in fact an afterlife. And depending on how you navigate your life here on earth, your afterlife situation could either be tragic or pleasurable. Now, they don't know for sure. You can't prove that. You can't prove that heaven or hell exists because you've never been there before. But this is just an ideology that was formed. And in my opinion, it was formed to be able to control the living. Now, let's look at how Christianity was spread, especially in these parts of the country. We know about the plantation. We know about, the slave trades and all of that. And we know that the whole Jesus story was sold to them as a sort of, should I say, a reprise for the suffering that they undergo here on earth or on the plantation. And so they tell them that, don't worry, your reward within heaven. And that's why you can find verses in the Bible that says things like, slaves, obey your earthly masters as you would obey Christ, even though they're nasty and
I get your point.
yeah. So they have been able to control that narrative, and through that, they've been able to control the minds of the living people. So they get you scared that there's a possibility that after suffering here on earth, your suffering might still continue in the afterlife, and nobody's gonna like that. Yeah. So everybody's gonna want to do what it would take to guarantee them a more pleasurable afterlife situation. So they live their life. As a matter of fact, I believe that if you live life with that kind of mentality, you're already dead, because then you don't get to pause and smell the flowers. You don't get to actually be present and actually live life, because you're scared of what's going to happen if you make the slightest mistake. Like, you could get it wrong. I mean, like, you could literally be a good person all your life, and let's say just before you die, you commit a tiny sin. All that goodness
It's gone. It's gone by implication.
Basically. Yeah, so everybody is scared of.
I mean, you could also be a bad person all your life, and then do one good and find God.
There's that as well. So it's just like everybody is just so scared of what they're not even sure is going to happen after they die. And then leaving.
Sorry about that. Sorry to cut you short. I just remember how, because of this, when we were younger, people used to formulate how they'll do all the bad things. Then they'll be like, when they're in their sick bed, just say, is how people used to plan their death. Please go on. Sorry for intruding.
Yeah, that's the reason why there is so much fear surrounding death. I see death as something to be celebrated. And I mean, in ancient civilizations, they actually celebrated death. I see death as a great thing. I mean, like, you're finally free from this hellhole.
Because it can be a
I believe that
hell.
if there is a hell, it's right here on earth. Because there can't be anywhere else that is worse than this. And besides, this is the only place that you have a body. It's just because if you have a body that you can experience things, either pain or pleasure. So there is no other place.
You leave the
Unless
body.
exactly,
There's
you literally
evidence of
leave
you
your
leaving the body here.
So
Interesting. Interesting. You raised a lot of interesting points. Daniel, please, what do you have to say to that?
So man wasn't created to die. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a problem with death. Is because not only is it that we don't understand it, but man originally, according to God's original plan, wasn't made to die. Death only came into the picture after the fact, right? And when death came to the picture, man was made slave to death. So we didn't have an answer to death. Death ruled over us. And so with death came everything else: darkness, sickness, poverty, everything. That's why, death and its children, every other thing that looks like that separation from life, separation from wealth, separation from health, separation from peace, separation from everything else, as a result of that. And Jesus Christ came into the picture, according to the Bible, to answer that question. That's why he had to die. To answer your question, why the whole, brouhaha about the death and not the life. Yes, the life was great, and his life came and taught us several things, but it was essential that he had to die. And that's, yes, in fact, the holy grail of Christianity, because his death was the answer to the fall of man. The answer, he came to redeem. To redeem means to buy back. To restore means everything that man lost in the Garden of Eden. The death of Christ came to fix, to return us back to that original state. So the Bible says that, for a believer, death is not so bad, because for a believer, death is like sleeping. It's a transition, because we are not separate from God. Remember, I said the big issue is separating from God. But if you're not separate from God, if you're one with God, there are people in the Bible who didn't necessarily die. So it's not a must that you must die. But even if you die, it's not a big problem in Christianity. If you understand it as you should, it's not a big problem. You can transit, you can pass on. And the interesting thing is, life itself just shows us all the ways that transiting is part of our existence. We see it. This plant will fall and die, and then transit into earth, and then earth will go back. It's the cycle of life. So it has become part of our culture, but if you're, according to original design, if you're one with God, then you master death. Death is not over you like it was in the fall of Adam. When you're redeemed, death is under you. So you have a say. You can control death. Death isn't your master, so you shouldn't be afraid of it. Especially when there is no sin. The big question is, that fear of, if I die, what's going to happen with all this sin I'm carrying, all this load. But when the question of sin is done away with, which is what was done in the cross, there's no sting in death. You just pass on, and then you go and enjoy your life of peace, or like you said, your life of freedom. Yes, but the big question is, what do you transit with? Are you carrying the baggage of sin, or you're free from it? That's the big question.
I'm going to ask a question.
Yes, please go ahead. I have a question for him as well.
Okay, so you just raised a point that has actually been an issue. Like, it's been a sort of confusion for me. Let's see if you can, throw more light on that. First of all, you're not the first person that I've heard that said that man wasn't originally created to die. But then it begs the question of, why was there a tree of life in the garden, and why weren't they allowed to eat it? If they were created to die, which there is actually no indication that they were not created to die, rather, but it's very clear that they couldn't have eaten of the tree of life, which would have given them eternal life.
Why?
So,
Why wasn't it? How was it clear that they shouldn't have eaten?
no, it was clear that they didn't eat of it.
Yeah.
Because, God told them to. God took them out of the garden before they were. So that's one. Like, what is the indication, or what is or how do I put it? How do you prove that they weren't created to die. So that's one. And then secondly, it's just like, if sin was the cause of death, that was what brought death into, the equation, then human beings were the ones that sinned. How come other things die, right? Plants.
Okay, so let me answer that.
And then, lastly, if Jesus was the answer to, restitute the whole, take us back to God, take us back to the original form, why do we still die after giving our lives to Jesus?
Okay, so, and thank you for that. Great question. So, the book of Genesis, the story of creation, happened to come to Moses, and Moses saw it as a vision, and he wrote. So, when you see a vision, you write what you see, right? You don't. So the book of Genesis is like a picture of the creation. It's not exactly what happened, it's a vision of what happened, right? So don't take some things as verbatim, yes, as literal as it appears, right? Okay. So some of those things are in figures because it's a vision. You dream and you see visions, right? Now, the book of Genesis says God created man in his own image and after his likeness, right? So a lot of what we have is after God, right? And even scientifically, it shows that there's no reason why the human should die scientifically, because your cells replenish themselves. They create new cells. So by original design, you should live on. But it happens that in a certain arc in a man's existence, that regeneration of cells, something happens to it and it starts to degenerate. So the graph goes like this and goes like this. So instead of it to keep going like so it even beats science reasoning, because science doesn't understand it. What is that thing that happens to the cells that makes it degenerate, right? So science doesn't have a question for that. Because even in the natural world, a lot of things can go on and on and on. The planets, the systems, the sun, you just keep going on and on and on. Why doesn't the sun get tired of burning and just say, oh man, I'm tired? Yes, scientifically, cells and stars also die. They burn out, right? But this our sun, why doesn't it burn out in our own lifetime, right? But in the book of Genesis, God created the Garden of Eden and put man into it and said, this is the tree of life. This is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Do not eat of this. Every other tree you can eat, but do not eat of this tree. He said every other tree, including the tree of life. So man could have been feasting. Every time man lived and man was like, I feel like I am regenerate, battery charged, full power, let's go. That could have been man's life. But no, man chose to do what the Father told him not to do. And that's when death was introduced into the world. And not only did man die, every other thing, death became master of creation. That's why the world is in chaos today, according to the Bible, right? It's not, death didn't only come to man. Man was put in charge of the earth. God created the earth and said, man, take charge of it, right? And then man sold out and death ruled over all of creation, not just over man. That's why animals eat people and animals eat flesh. When God originally created it, there was no wildness in it. Animals, lion wasn't supposed to eat and drink blood. That is a result of the fallen nature, right? And all of that happened. Now, Jesus came to fix that. There's literature that says that Jesus was represented in the Garden of Eden as the tree of life, right? So that if you partake of him, you may not die. Yes, your outward man might be perishing, but if you partake of him, you can renew, you can rejuvenate. Now, why do men still die even after they have received the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Now, there are three kinds of rejuvenation that you experience when you give your life to Christ. The spirit is one level, right? You're renewed. The mind is another level. You change the way you think. You have to, by yourself, actively change the way you think. How? You look at a girl, look at a booty. Before you're like, ooh, that's nice booty, nice girl. But now you change the way you think. Instead of thinking that way, you're like, okay, that's a nice girl, nice sister, nice brain. How are you doing? So that's.
Oh, you can't see the brain.
Wait. I'm just giving as an example a way you
consciously change the way you think, right? You see food, oh my God, I got to eat all this food. I can't control myself. No, you change the way you think. Say, no, you can't control yourself. You're not slave to the food. The food is slave to you, right? You change. So that's one way. And that happens throughout your lifetime. That second way you get saved. And the last way you get saved is your body, which is the last form of salvation, right? And that happens in the end, right? When rapture happens. Then your body is, if you're still alive and rapture happens, your body is changed forever. Your body will never die. So there are 3 stages, right? It doesn't all happen at once, if that answers your question.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about death itself and life. We need to go into the intricacies as to reincarnation because I think when somebody talked about the generation theory, I think that was you and all of that. Where's the place of reincarnation? Why can't they don't remember their past lives and it actually does exist and all of that? So we spent a lot of time talking about this. I think they're too.
It's obvious. Yeah, I understand. I was actually going to go into that.
I mean, there are lots of things to talk about. You guys have to deal with it in the edit.
Yeah, I know, right?
The editor, good luck to you.
So our wonderful producer reminded us that we were speaking too much about death, and she's scared of death, as are many people. Even me, when they talk, say, oh, you must celebrate life. I still fear, I don't want to die today like this. Maybe next 34 years or 48. But yes, we're all scared of death. We're all scared of death. And it's completely understood. But still, I want us to veer into the conversation of life after death. Also, while emphasizing the view of what death feels like to me as a person. You mentioned that you think death is natural, just as life is. That's how death is. I'm leaning towards your opinion, to be fair, because I see death as rebirth. I see death as what happens when we're kids. When we're kids, we see life in its beautiful form. We see the wonders of life. It's almost as though because we haven't been able to gather all the opinions of other people of how life is stressful, or maybe because we don't cater for families yet, we are not paying NEPA bills. It's not us that is deciding how the food gets to the table. So everything still has that air of wonder. Everything is wonderful. You just want to go outside and play football with your friends. You just want to see your friends. You want to go to school. Sometimes it's fun because you know you're going to go and do something fun. So it means that there is a lens that children view life with that adults don't necessarily view life with, which is why death could be kind, because when you live life and there's a lot of basbos in life, basbos from left, basbos from right. At some point in time, you just want to just go and, just sleep. And maybe that sleep is what we call death. And then you come back again in another form, which is what we call reincarnation. So before I ask you guys questions on reincarnation, I want to share a few views on reincarnation from various worldviews. So first, in African African cultures, reincarnation is actually believed very, very truly by our forefathers. The Yorubas believe in reincarnation so much that there are some kids that they even name Abiku, Abie. These are kids that you believe that probably died and come back to the same family. Some, they believe that they die in one place and go and start living life in another place. There's a lot of beliefs that some people die, and even people who know them still see them after they have died. That's ghosts. I'm going to introduce that later. But first, Africans believe in reincarnation. Christians do not believe in reincarnation, only resurrection. So no reincarnation in this earth. According to the beliefs of the Hindu, there's a belief in reincarnation as well, such that what you reincarnate as is tied to how you lived your previous life. So your karma your karma of your previous life determines how you reincarnate. So there's actually beliefs in Hinduism that if you lived a terrible life, you can probably incarnate as an animal. Maybe you lived a bad life and you come as a snake or a lizard. According to Buddhist belief, there's also rebirth. There's another flow of life. Of course, Yoruba believes in reincarnation. The Igbo traditions believe in incarnation. Now let's go to you. According to your worldview, what do you think of reincarnation? What happens after
I'm
death?
just very curious.
What happens after death? You can feel free to connect it
So
to
this is
beliefs of heaven and hell.
you already know how I feel about that.
I don't know.
I mean, I've been vocal about it. I don't believe in an afterlife location, either heaven or hell. Now, about reincarnation, that one is quite tricky because we've actually had instances where people, children especially, they can tell you with great accuracy, events that happened in a past life that are also verifiable. There's been like countless stories like that they actually went to these locations. I think a young boy said that he used to live in a certain place, he used to do something. They actually went to verify it and it was true. I personally have not had, a direct experience with reincarnation, but I know that it's something that we, especially as Nigerians, very much believe in. But if I were to share my own personal opinion on that, I would say, first of all, in science, one of the laws of, I can't remember what it is, but it says that energy can neither be created.
Newton's law.
Thank you. I wasn't a science student. Yeah, so it says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only changed from one form to another. And to piggyback on that, I just feel like life is not, it's not the body, it's what is animating the body. The body, I see it as the vessel for your spirit. And the spirit is intangible. It's literally the non-physical aspect of reality, the non-material aspect of reality. Since it is not manifested, then it cannot die, because that's the reason why I'm going to reference the Bible. It says, store your treasures where it cannot be destroyed, or something like that. Because anything that is here on earth, this earth is a finite reality. And so anything that is here basically is subject to death. But whatever is not, well, it can't die. Spirit can't die. And so I believe that spirit changes form. It doesn't die. It was never created, but it changes form. If you ask me about God, I would say that I don't believe in a conscious creator, but I believe in energy that transforms itself into different forms. And so everything that exists in the universe, both the animate and the inanimate things, they are all a part of one source. And there's something called the Akashic records, right? This is kind of like a record of literally everything that happens. So if every minute on Earth was being recorded, or people's memories, it's basically stored in the Akashic record. And the Akashic record is basically, the way that I see it, it's just all our consciousness put together. And because I believe that consciousness is one, I also kind of believe that we can have access into other people's memories. And so coming into this world as a child, you're still very, desensitized to a lot of things. So your mind is wild, your imagination is wild. So you're able to tap into that reality much faster than an adult who is burdened by, life and all of that. An adult whose worldview has already been shaped by their experience. And so it's much easier for children to remember their past lives than it is for an adult. Unless, of course, we do like hypnosis and all of that goes deep into your subconscious and kind of like accesses hidden memories or locked memories. But when it comes to the question of why don't we remember our past lives, I would say that we actually do, because as children, you would say it's a very crazy thing. And then the adults around you will tell you, well, that's not true because that's not how reality works. For example, a child could tell you that they are seeing their grandmother, but you know that the grandmother has passed. And so you would tell that child, you cannot possibly be seeing your grandmother. But they know that they have been seeing their grandmother. And so it's kind of like we who are adults whose minds are closed to this other reality, we kind of project that closed-mindedness onto the child to the point where they start to even gaslight themselves. Like, is this really real? Am I really seeing? Like, it tends to now look like you're hallucinating, exactly. But then again, science has proven that we can only see about 99.9% of the spectrum of visible light.
We can only see
about 99.9% of visible light, like what
a
you
lot
can
less
see.
than that.
Pardon?
We can only see. Sorry, say that again.
Oh, okay.
99%
So we can't see, we can only see about 0.1%. I'm sorry. I got that mixed up. Yeah, so basically that means that 99.9% of what's happening around us cannot
we
be
can't,
picked up
yeah.
with
Can't
our
see it.
Yeah,
visible eyes.
yeah.
I don't understand.
Including sound as well. There's a lot going on
Yeah.
that we're only privy to just maybe a 1% of.
Oh, so what we see is 0.1%
Yes,
of.
of what is available.
To science. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So most times, like if a child is still tuned into that very high frequency, they're able to detect, a lot of things that you as an adult would not possibly be able to see.
That's interesting.
And then, even with us, like, can you remember back in childhood, say from 0 to 5 years?
Not very much.
You can't really remember, yes, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen, right? You just don't have memory of it.
That's very interesting.
Very.
Very interesting. So Daniel,
Yeah, just to pick up on some of the things you have said, which I totally agree with. Just first of all, the fact that we only see in part, we only see a very small fraction of what's available. I mean, shouldn't that make us just humble? I know that like, there's so much out there. And the fact that humans can be so proud and so adamant that this is what it is.
Yeah.
I know this is what it is. But you're experiencing just a little part of what's available, right? Yeah, so I'll start off by saying that, there is a lot that we don't know about life, about life. And death and reincarnation and, the afterlife, a lot of it falls within that range. Like you rightly said, no one has gone to see it and come back to say this is how it is. But there are people who have had near-death experiences. There are people who have had dreams and visions. There are people who have had all these things that can paint a picture for us. Not give us the exact, roadmap of where we're going to after now, but just paint pictures. And since, I'm a man of faith, I believe the Bible also is one of those materials that has painted a picture for us to see. The Bible says after death, that's it. It's judgment. You don't come back here. You don't do any of those things, But however, also in the Bible, there are certain things that point to the fact that there might be instances where people have come back. And something about falsehood. Falsehood isn't, especially conscious falsehood, meaning if someone wants to introduce falsehood into a system, the easiest way to do it is to base it on the truth. You don't just come and throw falsehood out of nowhere. It'd be hard for it to stick. So what the deceiver would do is to base it on the truth and then just skew it a bit. And then over time, you see, it's like engineering. When you plot graphs, you have to get it to 0.0000000, the accuracy. You know why? Because if you get it, if the error is just small, initially it won't make a difference. But the more you build, the more you grow, you find the departure will widen,
Wow.
you know. Now, I've said that to say that in the Bible, God said to the prophet Jeremiah, before you were born, before you were formed, I knew you.
Yeah.
So there was an existence before the existence. There was something else. We don't know what that is. We existed in him. You called it finite energy. You called it, whatever. People can call it different things, but it just points to the fact that there had to be some kind of conscious intelligence behind the physical realm as we see it, And then the Bible says it is God, people call it whatever, but the Bible says it is God, right? Now, before Jeremiah was born, he existed somewhere. So there is a pre-life. There has to be, there can't just be nothingness. Because like you rightly quoted Newton, that energy had to have come from somewhere. Before you were born, that life force had to have come from. So it can't just come from nowhere. Like even science doesn't answer that question of what is behind all of this. So what is it? And we look at physical life to see examples of the spiritual life, right? Because we know that this physical life, like you said, it hangs on something. So we can look at what we see and know that there's something behind it, right? Now look at the physical life. Look at atoms. These atoms are moving constantly, right? I saw a visual representation of how a cell actually works. My guy, this cell works like a human being. It cleans itself. It goes into the room, takes food. This is a cell. A single-celled organism. It takes food in, breaks down the food, eats it, excretes it, cleans out the excreta. A cell, dude. Through a microscope, this cell is intelligent, solving its own problems, doing, I'm just so shocked that people can see that and go like, that just happened on its own. No. If there's intelligent design, then there has to be an intelligent designer. Right?
Okay.
Now, about reincarnation, the Bible says things about, there are like two characters in the Bible that the Bible says will come back. Right? And those two characters will come back in the last days and all of that. The Bible also speaks about John the Baptist coming in the spirit of Elijah, right? Now, these are hints of something that might look like reincarnation, but it isn't reincarnation like we claim it to be, that when we die, we all just come back to... No, I think that is, personally, I think that is based on a falsehood that has its foundations in scripture, in spirituality, but has just been skewed somewhat. And now over years, the thing has now turned into something else, There's clairvoyancy, there are people who talk to the dead. Where did all these things come from, right? If you can speak to a dead person, where was that dead person? Where was the person existing?
I mean, there's even instances of that in the Bible.
Right. Exactly. That the prophet will call a dead person forth and learn things. Like, where did that come from? Why? How are we able to speak to a dead person if the dead person didn't exist, right? Although there's the technicalities of it that you're actually speaking to a demon spirit, right? Actually. But I mean, these are the things. And if you're not clear, and if we don't understand these things, we'll just go through with falsehood and just go amiss somewhat.
So it is your opinion that there are a lot of things that we don't completely understand. And it's also your opinion that there is so much intelligence in the world that there had to be a designer.
Intelligent designer.
An intelligent designer. So it's a Buddhist belief that there is intelligence, yes. But what about that if that intelligence arises of itself so? So is it impossible to believe that that intelligence arises by itself? For instance, we have hearts. Like you mentioned, your nerve ends, your cells, go through actual work and they do this stuff by themselves. You mentioned how when a cell generates, so there is a going up, and suddenly it goes down. I want to ask you about waves. the waves of an ocean.
The waves
of an ocean.
Yes, yes.
We understand that waves, in that same fashion, they always go up and down. Up and down. Up and down. For eternity. I don't think the rivers die, do they? It feels like they're going on for eternity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So couldn't you say in that same vein, humans don't die? Couldn't you say in that same vein, we have never died? Couldn't you say in that same vein that when a man and a woman copulate, give birth to a son, a child, a son or a daughter, isn't it that same cell that was in my body that left and went into the body of my child? So I have taken another form, but am I not still alive in the form of my child? So am I dead really if I die? So I want to try and liken this and ask, because I really like to think outside the box of us humans. I feel like with these conversations, we always limit it to human life. We don't usually think about the life of other life forms like animals, plants, particularly plants. I take this very seriously because science teaches us that carbon monoxide that we breathe out is what plants breathe in. And then the oxygen that we breathe in is what plants breathe out. So it means that according to the Bible story, when God created Adam and breathed air into Adam, it could also be said that the plants that were created were the air that were God's way of breathing air into Adam. I'm going to track it back to the cell that I spoke about. So the cells by themselves do those work by themselves. When we have our heart beats. Who beats the heart for you? Are you the one that is beating your heart, or is it your heart that is beating itself? When we do things like we move our hand around, like, are you telling your hand to move before your hand moves? Or does your hand move of itself so? So if there's so much intelligence that happens not only just in us humans, but also in plants and animals and vast oceans, and even the sun, the moon, can these things not just happen of itself so, even though we cannot explain it? I don't know if I explained that well. So,
Lively, I hear what you're saying, but it's difficult for me to believe. I think it's easier to believe, and you know, I'm speaking very plainly.
okay.
There are some things that are too hard to believe. Like, because the way the world is, the design of the world is too intricate. It's too prepared. Like, do you know what it takes for life to exist on Earth? The chances for life to exist on Earth is 0.0000. Like, it is, for a life to exist anywhere else within our solar system is so little that the way the Earth is positioned at the exact distance from the sun, the temperature and pressure of the Earth, the way it is regulated for life to exist here, the chances that life exists any other place is so far-fetched, right? It is too intentional to say that it is just by chance. It is harder for me to believe. You know, people laugh at Christians and say, oh, you're a fool, you're a fool. But it is harder to believe otherwise. It is even more folly to believe that these things just happened by themselves than for me to believe that there was a hand. We might have represented, yes, we might have represented that hand wrongly. Oh, that is not on me. But to say that there is no hand behind it is hard for me to accept.
I get it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Pastor, what are
Wow.
Yes, it's not. So in a problem, I think we should talk about the ethics of euthanasia that will generally understand all of that. And
how about ghosts? I thought you're going to tell us about that thing where people appear in different places.
Ghosts and euthanasia.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, my producer. So we're about to round off. This is such a great conversation. It feels like it can go on for
Like, I
For
just
days.
want it to end.
It feels like we can go on for hours. Hopefully, in subsequent seasons, we'll find a way to still continue to have this conversation. I feel like conversations like this are non-ending. I feel like the conversations always should continue. But in our way of rounding off for today, let's talk about ghosts. What do we think of ghosts?
What are ghosts?
Yes. I mean, I have this belief. When my brother died, I have this belief that there's a lot of his attributes that was shed down to his siblings. So things that he used to do when he was alive, like things that he just used to do. My brother has this thing where he used to scratch like his head. He would just be touching his head like this. That one passed down to somebody. There's another thing that he used to do. He passed down to another one of my siblings, and so on and so forth. And I remember sometimes I'll be in the shower, I'll think about my brother very deeply, close my eyes, and I'll just feel him looking at me. Do you get that? Do you get that vibe? So when people say that they see people who have died, there's a lot of instances of people actually seeing people who have already died. Do you think it's possible?
I feel like once your body is buried, there's no chance of that body appearing somewhere else. But this is just my opinion. I mean, I haven't really seen anything to the contrary. I've heard ghost stories. I think that they're fascinating. I would love to see one. Yes, I would love to have that experience. But it's just, I don't have a habit of believing things that I cannot necessarily prove or make sense of. But then again, it brings us back to what we talked about, the spectrum of light. It's very possible that they could still be around us. I mean, you have thoughts, you have emotions. These things are not tangible, but they are very real.
Yes.
Now, when you interact with someone, before meeting that person, they basically never existed to you because they hadn't come into your auric field, or let's just say they haven't come into your radar, right? But then from the very first point of contact, a memory has been planted in your mind. So that even when you don't physically see this person, they still live on in your head or in your mind. They could have traveled, they could have just not been with you physically, or they could even have died. But that doesn't mean that they stop existing to you, because in some immaterial reality, you still interact with their essence. Thinking of that, I feel like it's very possible I feel like this is what makes it possible for mediums to interact with spirits and all, because that essence, like you said, is still present somewhere. But speaking specifically about ghosts, as in like seeing a physical apparition of a spirit, I don't know. Like, I can't say yes or no to that. I would just say it's possible based off of the fact that we can only see 0.1% of
How about dreams? How about seeing dead people in your dreams?
your dreams. As far as dreams go, I just feel like it's all linked to your brain, your mind. I mean, the way that the neurons in your brain create like neural pathways, it's just your consciousness playing mind games on you.
Oh, you feel their games?
That's what I feel. Unless you can, I don't know, if you have seen something in your dream that you could never have possibly envisioned, then I think that would be interesting.
I'm going to tell you something quickly. I'm going to tell you something. When I was in uni, we had a crisis in school. We had a religious crisis in school where I dreamt about something. I slept and I dreamt. And in my dream, I was in a class and I looked and I saw people running towards me from outside the class. I saw some extremists, some religious extremists running towards where I was sitting in the class, right? I saw them through the window. That was a dream. A few weeks later, in Mina, in school, there was a religious crisis in the school. And I was in class watching, and I turned like this, and I saw that exact same thing.
Yeah.
Saw them running exactly what I saw in my dream. And that's just one instance where I've seen things happen in my dream, and the exact thing happens in reality.
Yeah.
There are-
Sorry, to speak to that, I completely believe in, premonitions and stuff,
Right.
because energy is not tangible, but it can be felt. For example, let's say you walk into a room and there was an argument in that room minutes ago. Maybe you didn't walk into the argument, but you can tell based on how, tense the energy is. I feel like I solemnly believe that time is not linear and everything is happening, all at once. And so it's very possible that you could
I picked up on something that happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before
Outside
it
time.
happened. Yes. I firmly believe in that.
Right, right. I agree with you as well. I do believe that we are in time, but if there are people that exist outside of time, they can pick things and drop it into your spirit in time. So you're experiencing it in your subconscious, can tap into it because this is time happening here.
Yeah.
And but outside of time where God exists, he sees everything happening at once. That's why it's possible for him to have crucified the Christ outside before the foundations of the world and seen the end from the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega. Everything is happening outside of time. We're just experiencing it, right? Now about ghosts. I believe there are dimensions, right? There are dimensions existing right now, but we can't pick on these dimensions because we're limited by our five senses, right? But however, sometimes those windows open, right? Those windows, there are gaps. There's a glitch in the matrix, and people tap into it and see something, and then the thing isn't there again, right? And you're like, whoa! I believe that can happen. I believe you can see things.
Deja vu.
Yes, absolutely,
Deja vu
absolutely,
always messes with me. Because I'm like,
absolutely.
bro, this thing has not
You're
happened
tapping
before.
into
Why
something.
does it feel like?
Yeah, you're tapping into something.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you're tapping into something.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask about how deja vu connects to past memories. Because that's my own logic for believing in reincarnation. Because there's some things that will just happen and I'm like,
You've seen this
I lived
before.
this life before. What's happening here?
Yeah. Outside time, everything has happened.
Yeah.
It's difficult to understand because we're in time, but outside of time, everything has happened. There's a concept, there's an interesting concept, right? So I listen to some people say it online, that there's a part in the Bible where Jesus went on Mount Transfiguration. And when he was on the mountain, there was Moses and there was Elijah at the same time, right? Happened. And the disciples saw them, and the disciples were like, oh my God. Someone said that his view of that is that on that mountain in that time, Jesus tapped into the past, right? And everything was happening at the same. Elijah, there was a time Moses went up to the mountain to meet with God. There was a time Elijah too went up to the mountain in the past, right? The person who was making the commentary said he believes that thing happened at the same time, right? And they just broke time. Right? And it happened. I'm like, that is so mind-blowing. That is so mind-blowing that in the past, when Moses was there, Jesus was also there, tapping into the future. Moses was tapping into the future and seeing Jesus and seeing Elijah. In Elijah's time, he was tapping into the past and seeing Moses and tapping into the future and seeing Jesus at the same time. So those three people met, and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting.
I mean, it's just like your mind, right? But like with memory, you cannot physically insert yourself in that memory, but you can replay it
in your mind.
Playing.
And you know what? You can tap into a memory that can affect you physically.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You feel it like it's, yes, your body doesn't know the difference. Exactly. Really interesting concept.
Mind-blowing. I really don't know what's going to happen. So you guys can see it now. Backstage, they are looking at me. Hey, bro.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia. Yes, our last conversation. Mercy killing.
Right.
This is when someone is probably going through something and you feel like it would be better for them to die and stop experiencing pain. So, what's your view on that? According to religious beliefs, one shall not kill. Even according to the law of the land, one, you have no right to take any other person's life, even your own life. So it means you cannot tell somebody to kill you when you are going through such pain. But let's think about, I've seen films where people who are going through intense pain, and I'm just there sitting in my couch and thinking, just kill him. Just kill him. The case would be different if I was the one that had to do the killing, or if I was the one that they had to kill. So I'm asking you to put yourself in that situation of, if you were the one that had to do the mercy killing, if you were the one that had to kill someone, and also if you were just backstage watching this drama play on, how would you feel about that?
Yeah. So I want to drop a story. I heard this story about this guy who runs an orphanage, and in that orphanage there was this child who was deformed from birth. Right, the child. You know how babies are curved in the fetus. This child was born that way, and the baby never stretched. So the baby grew up and became a grown, maybe I forget how old she was, maybe 9 or 10 or 12, and was still curved like this. And they used to carry this child around in a basket, and they used to feed her like this. She was curved, right? And something interesting happened at the orphanage, and because the orphanage is attached to a church, they used to hold services there and things like that. And it happened during one of the services. They said to shout, yeah, you know, and the reverend whose wife used to run the orphanage and used to do services there, ran to the scene of the thing that happened, and they looked, and this girl who was curved, who was a monster, started to stretch out like this. And she stretched out until she was fully formed. And this girl stretched to normal. And then that story was shared somewhere because the guy is a minister, I used to go around sharing, and it was shared somewhere in the UK in a doctor's meeting. And one of the doctors was so astounded by that story, and the doctor said, I want you to bring this girl to the UK. That's how the girl was brought to the UK, and her school, she was paid, she was given a lifetime scholarship, and her life totally transformed. This same girl that was curved like a monster for all her life had a life-changing experience, and that's how her life changed for good. I'm saying that to say that as humans, our abilities or our views on life are so limited that we are really incapable of we should be really incapable of making some life-changing decisions for people, such as terminating someone's life because in our view the person is suffering, or because in our view the person's life has been capped, or the person's life cannot extend beyond this period in our view. Like we've established that our view is 1% of what exists. Like, what gives us the right to think that there is no way forward from that point to terminate the life? I've heard stories of people being buried, and as they're burying the person and pouring sand, the person will knock, and they'll open the thing and the person will come out. You know, so life, there's a lot to life, and life is very spiritual and beyond what we can see, feel, touch, or hear, that we should be careful when making some of these finite decisions or these final decisions. That's my take on it.
That's a very beautiful take.
Okay, well, for me, I feel like all death is predetermined. I mean, if life is predetermined, then certainly death is. And I don't believe that there's anything like an untimely death. Because if it's just not your time, then you won't go. Like you mentioned, the guy who was shot 16 times. If it is just not your time, you won't go. I just feel like...
Who determines this time?
It's predetermined. I don't know who. So you can't actually say that it is God, because you can't prove that.
Right.
I would just say because, we have different terminologies to describe these things, I would say is your soul.
Your soul.
Yes, your soul. And because we already have established that there is a continuity, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And I feel like there is oneness in terms of like everybody's soul is connected. I just feel like your soul decided to incarnate here for whatever reason, really. It doesn't even have to be like a reason, but maybe you just chose to experience this finite reality. You just came here to experience, even if it's just for 1 second. I mean, we've heard of like stillbirths or children who died after birth. I just feel like that was their soul's agreement or their soul's contract when they were coming here. And so there is no other window to take you out other than the one that has been predetermined for your incarnation. Now, who does the predetermining is not really my concern, because I cannot say yes or no to it. I didn't choose to come here. I don't know when all that happened. I just woke up and I found myself here. But then I also find that I can't also decide when to leave. So we just have to play.
What was suicide?
Yeah, so I actually like the idea of suicide, but I just feel like a lot of people are scared of that because there's just a lot of what ifs to build upon. What if you would have had a better life? What if you would have become the president? What if things would have... There's just a lot of what ifs that make people want to stay here to, permit me to say, fuck around and find out. So I personally, I am it's your conscious decision. I might not subscribe to the idea of taking another person's life, but when it comes to you deciding that it is time for you to go, by all means, please. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I feel like I really want to experience this life. I think this life is a gift. I just think, like, regardless of how tough, regardless of the struggles that you face, there is still beauty in life, because I believe that your perception creates a reality. And so if you don't have a negative perception, well, your life is not going to be negative. If you see life as rosy, as, you see the positives in life, then that's what's going to manifest for you. But when it comes to like euthanasia, I'm very, very conflicted on that, because I feel like if you see someone suffering and maybe like they're begging you, please just do it, please don't do it, I'm in pain, I will do it. I will do it. So it's just, I don't know.
Thank you. You guys are far too kind. Something that kept coming to mind while you guys were speaking was one of the things one of my spiritual teachers usually says, Alan Watts, and he says that all life is drama. Yeah, he says all life is drama, and you are the director and also the actor,
the producer, everything.
As a producer, you're everything all at once. And if you see life as drama, then, well, you may want to check out and say, oh, no, I'm not acting this drama again.
God. You fuck around and you find out. Then you go backstage. You see the real producer.
That's if there is a real producer, or you can just meet yourself, your higher self.
I mean
it could be anyone.
Abraham Hicks says that you made that decision to come into this world, to experience this plane, to have this experience, this beautiful and wonderful experience. I like to agree with you and say it really is just the lens with which you view life. It's also my strong belief that heaven and hell is a construct of the mind, and you can, by quieting the hell part of your mind, experience heaven on earth and view life as a gift, and
grateful.
Be grateful for that life. No kotamo. Me then yes, I did double sometimes. And be grateful for life. And I'm grateful for this episode. I'm grateful for the opinions that you have shared. Thank you, Daniel. You taught me a lot in this episode. Shalom, you as well. taught me a lot. I'm sure that we all learned. I'm sure that we that are home as well learned one or two. Please feel free to share your opinions in the comments. Let us know how you feel about what we said. Did we say jargons? Did we say stuff that actually resonated with you? Let us know. And always leave comments. Make sure you subscribe to us. And always remember that we are not divided. We are just different sometimes. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Versus. Have a good one. Wow. Wow.
You know, I wanted to ask a question. It's like, thank you.